you know, just understand a little of some of the challenges that we are facing at this very, very awkward time. I know that across Africa, thankfully, the infection and the death rate has been relatively low compared to what we're facing in the UK, but obviously the economic impact is huge. So the title of this morning's roundtable is Survive and Thrive. I'm hosting it together, and obviously AfroAsian are sponsoring it and enabling it to happen. We want to spend the next hour just really sharing information, and we would like to just give all of you a voice.
Thank you, Liz. So welcome everyone who is already online. We basically at AfroAsian came up with this idea part of the way through the lockdown in the UK, because obviously none of us have ever gone through anything like this before, where we are locked away in our homes, but still trying to continue with business as usual. So we thought it might be a good idea to host a forum since London and specifically UK is ahead of the COVID-19 pandemic curve compared to Africa. Basically share our experiences as well as have an exchange with you on how the actions of your respective governments following the pandemic, you know, in terms of lockdown, social distancing, curfews, etc., is impacting the way you do business. How is it impacting you economically in your countries? What are the strategies you are already thinking of about making up for lost business once we come out the other end? And basically, how do you see it changing insurance as a product going forward? Are there opportunities, or is it going to restrict the product range you can offer? Or how are we going to, as an industry, meet the challenge at the other end of this dark tunnel? So basically, this is the whole purpose of the forum today, to have a full and frank discussion between ourselves, and hopefully others who will refer to it later can benefit from the ideas of the key decision makers and thought formers who are on this forum.
As several of you have already mentioned, the idea of this is to try and find out a little bit of what's going on across the continent. We've got a fantastic spread from a geographical sense, and we're hoping that we might have some people join from Southern Africa. Well, we've got Lawrence, of course, with Botswana base, although I know you're in Lagos at the moment, Lawrence. But what we really want to do, first off, is to share some information across the continent. You know, just if I could ask you, you know, how is COVID-19 impacting your local business and social environments? Are you, obviously, Yared, I think you're the only one who's still managing to work from their office. So perhaps we could just start off with a very, very brief conversation around how you've managed that transition. And are you working from home? Are you able to continue business as normal? Or are you finding that it's really, truly just crisis management? I don't know if somebody would like to come in on that. Maybe we could start off. I mean, Hope, you're coming from your kitchen. How are the rest of the team managing, and you know, how are you managing to keep control of it all?
Thanks, Liz. It's been now 3 weeks working from home, and Nairobi is not totally locked down. They do advise against big crowds, and there's a from the evening there's a curfew. But we decided about 3 weeks ago that we could work from home. And we're doing well. We're having more meetings than normal. I believe everybody is. Our connectivity has been fine. We've reached out to some of our clients to try and understand what's going on. Of course, some of the projects are stalling. And I think we're getting comfortable in this system. The first week was a bit difficult, and we're all on video. By second week, people figured out they could do it in their beds without a video. I guess that's what Corneille is doing. And and we're trying to make the best out of it. We set out, we put in place a COVID a response team that everybody could reach out to in case there's a problem. So that is what is happening. 100% of our staff are working from home, and we really had no issues there. Thanks.
Fantastic to hear. I wonder if anybody out there had already, because obviously we'd had Ebola in the continent a few years ago. I wonder if anybody had a sort of pandemic plan, in business continuity plan in place that they've been able to enact, or whether it's been a case of reacting to the new circumstance. I could just briefly bring you in from Ethiopia, and please everybody remember to raise your hands if you want to come in and into the conversation. But Yared, in Ethiopia, you're not in lockdown, but is it having an impact on how people are doing business already without even an official lockdown?
Yes. As you might have already heard it, mainly there is no flight. The tourism sector and the hotel is entirely not functioning. So you can see that there is a serious impact in the economy. Even most offices, for instance, government offices are all locked down, they're not working. Some essential like electricity, power, telecom, insurance are for the time being working. So you can see that there is a huge impact in the economy. And internet is also not good here. So because of that, we are not, have the luxury to work, everyone work from home for the time being. But for some essential, with jobs that can be work remotely, we have already assigned them, like the legals, the back office workers, they are already in their home. Mainly, if you see the insurance, we're not having any new businesses at all, but we are focusing on the major renewals, and this is a huge renewal time for us. That's why most of staffs are working on renewal here in the office, and we are also preparing for upcoming renewals. June, July. This is the time that we do some risk profiling and compiling and assessing. So mainly it's like this. Yeah, the economy is not good, so does the insurance business too.
Yeah. We had already a plan, as I think Lawrence knows, that West Africa a few years ago was hit by the Ebola virus crisis, and almost all the communities and the businesses in Lagos, at least, took some measures in terms of communication, fast communication of what is going on with all the staff and other leaders of this country. And in terms of prevention, I will give you just an example. I think by January, in fact, we have never stopped to put hand sanitizers on our buildings since that time. So we installed them completely at the entrance of each lift, each office, and this was from that time. So there are automatic hand sanitizers providers since that time. So in fact, when in January, people were talking about the COVID outbreak, there was another pandemic which is going on in Nigeria, which people don't talk about. It's the Lassa fever. So which was declared, I think, last year in some states in Nigeria. So measures were still there, and we had just to enforce it and put our security personnel at every entrance to remind the staff. We have cameras watching if someone has washed his hands and all those things. Plus the thermometer, the capturing of everyone, including the CEO and his driver, and even at my home, my security personnel, they test me when I come back home. And this started in January. So I may say that there were plans. We had the business continuity plan already in place because of this was implemented when we had, there was, I think, another lockdown, this time decided by the population in 2015, I think, when the government started to try to raise the price of the fuel. And we had 15 days, 9 days of lockdown, total lockdown. So we had a business continuity plan already in place, including the one of evacuating staff if there is any political instability. So we had just to make it work quickly. Thank you very much.
Lawrence, I know you're in Lagos at the moment, but do you have a view of how the Southern African teams are prepping as well? Are they as well prepared as you guys in West Africa?
Okay, thanks, Liz. We do have a COVID response team that's reporting, that's meeting on a daily basis. They are actually meeting right now and giving us feedback as to what's happening in each of of our operating territories. So I'm kept fairly well up to date in terms of what's going on. In terms of preparedness, if you look at a country like Botswana, for instance, they've never seen anything like this. It's a fairly closed country. So they had never seen anything like this. So it's really new territory for them. And you can see that the response there has been particularly robust. They've declared a state of emergency, extended that now for 6 months, banned the sale of alcohol and tobacco products for the next 6 months and so forth. So you do have a fairly robust response happening in Botswana. But in terms of preparedness, I do view their level of preparedness as having been quite low relative to what we are seeing or what we have always had here in Nigeria, where we, as Corneille said, we only did ramp up what we already had in place because of the experience we've had due to the Ebola crisis, Lassa fever, to a certain degree, I think yellow fever, and also the fuel shutdown that we had a couple of years ago. My view is countries in Southern Africa, the level of preparedness is quite varied. Zimbabwe, for instance, with its challenges that go back now 10, 15 years, is not prepared at all. You are not seeing that much testing happening there. South Africa, because it's a more advanced, more open economy, we are seeing the number of cases rising quite rapidly, but it's primarily, in my view, the fact that they've got a much higher capacity to test and they've got a much better organized health sector. We are not seeing much in terms of reports from Mozambique, but Zambia, Angola, in those two countries, we are also seeing the number of cases going up. And for those two, I think the key thing is the economic impact. Both of them are resource-based economies, and in my view, a response similar to what we have seen in Europe is going to have a particularly severe impact on a country like Zambia and also a country like Angola that are primarily facing significant challenges already due to the tanking of global commodity prices. But yeah, we do have feedback from Southern Africa, and things there are quite different depending on the nation that you're talking about.
We really wanted to talk about the insurance and how you can manage clients. And we wanted to share a little bit of best practice between you in terms of managing clients. You've touched on the fact that you're not getting new business in, but you're very busy on the renewals. Perhaps before we drill down into that, we could also talk a little bit about the policy wordings, because I don't know what it's like in your individual countries, but certainly elsewhere in the continent or elsewhere in the world, there's quite a lot of pressure on insurers at the moment in terms of wording. You know, I mean, in New York, for example, the regulators are sort of almost suggesting that people pay the claims even if they haven't collected the premiums for those, and the policy wordings don't allow for claims payment. And I was doing a story yesterday about Ireland, and there the regulator is also saying, we don't care what the wording said, you've got to pay business interruption policies if people had them. So I'm just wondering if we could first of all just go around the room, the virtual room, and just try and get some opinion about whether your local policy wordings excluded pandemic in the first place, and what lines of business could be under threat. And then perhaps we can segue into best practices in managing your clients and helping them through this.
I think on the policy wordings, at least from the insurer side, we are clear that this is not covered under the BI part. But on the client side, there is a lot of confusion. And as we are seeing it, in fact, the various reports or the various blogs that you get to read, you are finding people coming out with innovative ideas or thoughts that how they can put it under the BI policy. In fact, somewhere I was reading and where it said that they invoked the civil authorities clause, that the civil authorities locked it down, so they should be paid a claim. So the people are, or the customers are becoming innovative on this. I know that I don't remember having seen a specific exclusion of a pandemic. But again, it does not, if you look at the connection between the BI and the property damage, I think there is no material damage loss, so it doesn't work. But I think the confusion in the minds of the customers are big. Another part that we are seeing, which is not on the wordings, but what we are seeing is now people going for curtailing their covers, because that requests have already started coming in. My factory is closed, treated as a silent risk. Can you give me a refund on premium? Can you reduce my premium? So one is there. The second one is that because of lower consumption or lower movement of goods, we are seeing a drop in the marine transit insurances, and even the stocks are depleting. So the stock insurances are also going down. So that is a trend that is being seen. Nairobi, we are working from the offices. Part of our office is working from home, part is working from the office, but the activity levels are pretty much down.
I think we've looked at the treaty wordings, and there are not many exclusions specifically on the pandemic. The only treaties that seems to exclude specifically is the life cat covers. So the rest of the treaties are silent. So from that perspective, I would imagine we may have a problem going forward if claims come through. I don't know what is the observation of my other colleagues on the reinsurance side, but the treaties seems to be very silent on the issue of pandemic.
We are still trying to understand what is in our different insurance treaties and what is in the policies of our cedent. This will take time, but our first impression and intuition is that we may not have really a big risk exposure on a pandemic exposure. There is one in health insurance. It is really rather coming from what our insurance supervisors or our cedent or our communities are asking to waive any pandemic exclusion where it is. But on the other side, on the P&C, issues of event cancellation and trade credits, all those lines of business were not really purchased by different people. So even if it is there, some business interruption, we don't think that it's a big issue for the insurance industry at the moment.
We've got mixed signals coming around here. I mean, it's quite clear on life. We already actually have a claim of the KQ pilot who's already died of COVID-19. So the life is clear, and I think we have no issues around there. The medical, the big medical underwriters in this region, it's also been very clear that there was an exclusion both on their policies and on our treaties with them. But like Corneille has said, there's been pressure around from regulators about making pronouncements about paying, and those are things I think we are seeing worldwide. But on major medical policies and treaties, there is actually clear exclusions of pandemic. How it will even out, how it play out, we'll see the kind of pressures. At this point, my conversation with regulators has been, you should be very worried about whether your companies are going to remain solvent after all this. Will they still be having staff? Will they still be even to run the normal course of business? But at this point, I think there's a lot of emotional, and it's across the world. It's not just around here. So clear on life for sure. We have already a claim on medical. It's very clear on business interruption. I think we are also quite clear around the exclusion without material damage. That I believe we haven't seen much coming through, but I think it will come through, like Rajiv said, from the clients. But at reinsurance level, we haven't yet felt that.
I will speak regarding the life policies, and primarily here we are reinsuring group life. The wording does explicitly exclude pandemics. I think the moment there is an official declaration like what's happened on COVID-19, declaring this to be a pandemic, the policy wordings that we have been using here explicitly exclude pandemics. So what we did advise the market, and we actually did send out a circular, we did advise them to ensure that they are aware of the fact that the moment COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic, the policy exclusion was automatically activated. What we do have are instances in which certain companies, and we've seen this coming out of Kenya in the initial stages of the spread of COVID-19 in certain countries, tried to sell specific COVID-19 policies. The strange thing is that those policies were exclusively being fronted by those companies. They didn't want to retain anything. They were asking reinsurers to take up reinsurance 100%, and we obviously turned that down. So I'm not aware of any policies that were in fact sold, but I know there were attempts that were made by certain companies to sell those policies. And then on the non-life side, what we have seen is, and this is coming out of South Africa, and Corneille might be interested to know, we've had a conversation with one of our partners in South Africa, one of the largest insurers in South Africa, and they mentioned that there is a supplier's extension for business interruption that was sold as part of their property policies that might in fact respond to this COVID-19 scenario where you do have business interruption without property damage. But if that interruption is happening at the point or in the supply chain where a major supplier fails to supply due to disruption of their business activities, the policy might in fact respond. We are investigating. We do participate in Namibia on policies that were issued by the same company, and we will be investigating to see. Unfortunately, we have not yet concluded our investigations, so I can't speak more authoritatively on it, but there is a fear, in fact, in South Africa that there will be significant losses arising out of that extension.
Just to respond on to the life insurance policies, what I was given to understand by somebody in the life insurance industry, that the policies which were issued slightly earlier, maybe 5, 7, 10 years back, they do not have this exclusion, but the later on policies have that exclusion when people started seeing this coming. So in the older policies, I don't know how the reinsurers will treat it, but in the older policies, the coverage still exists because there is no exclusion there. And in the current policies, the exclusions are specifically mentioned. So I'm not sure. So I think maybe Lawrence or Hope can throw some light on it, that what will be the stand that will be taken. And just Lawrence, one point on the suppliers extension. I think the suppliers extension also says that there has to be a material damage loss at their premises as covered in the main policy. So I don't know how it is coming.
I just wanted to really comment on the life treaties. And I know we've looked at quite a number of the treaties and even had discussions with our retrocessionaires, both Hanover Re and Swiss Re. I think the proportional treaties of the life side do not have a specific exclusion on any pandemics. And the expectation is that maybe the primary underwriter excluded it on the policy. But what we've had interesting discussion is on the life cat covers, which specifically exclude any pandemics. And in our discussion, we were trying to see whether they can consider waiver on this or not. But one of the challenges that, of course, they've come up with it. So there is also the period of the event, the 72 hours period event in any cat cover. So that would still still ensure that the cat covers are not able to respond to this particular pandemic, because unless the event is within 72 hours. So that's what I really wanted to point out. But on the life side, I think it's quite clear if claims were to come through, we would have to pay.
Before we speak to Lawrence, I was actually thinking a couple of things that have come out of the conversation. I'm wondering how much conversation there is between you as insurers and not just the insurance regulator, but also government more broadly. I know the UK insurers, for example, had a big meeting with the Treasury before the UK put out its package of measures to try and so that the Treasury understood what insurance was available. And as part of that, I'm also wondering how you're communicating that messaging to your customers. Are you waiting for them to raise the questions, or as Lawrence has mentioned, that you have actively talked to your customers about cover? But I'm wondering if you're then talking to people more broadly so that they actually understand where insurance can play this role.
So one of the issues, Maina has brought it up, the fact that most of the life treaties are proportional and it's not excluded means, and I'm telling you, we've already gotten a claim that we are paying or paid on life. So that one is clear. But going back to Lizzie's question around the communication, I think associations have met. The original idea we had was actually what I have seen out there as well in the West, putting together some sort of solidarity fund. So for example, the Association of Insurers of Uganda have done that. We've had a chat here with the ACI on how do we get a fund, because there was clarity about what was excluded, right? I think there might be some fewer areas that are not clear, but most of the major medical claims would be excluded and the BI would be excluded. And that was an understanding that kind of as a market, I think we understood. And then the regulators sort of blindsided us. So you had, one announcing today that there's no cover, the next day there's cover. And what we've seen is, sort of trying to pull the markets to rally behind them. So I don't think we've reached out to governments. I have not, other than the regulator. And maybe it's something that we need to pull up so that we can push back on some of the pressures that are coming, because there's an assumption that we have a pot of money that can pay even when we can't understand what the claims impact will be.
Basically, the general question to the panel, and I'm being kept intentionally silent during this meeting because, you know, I do run away with my mouth sometimes, but never mind. One of the questions to the panels that I want to ask personally is, from these perceived adversities due to COVID-19, do you actually see any business opportunities for yourselves, or do you see insurance evolving in some way later on where advantage can be taken?
I think to answer to what Udai is asking, two things which we can be looking at, because I think the recent case in point is the Wimbledon payout, which has been splashed over everywhere. And there are queries coming in, is there some sort of insurance which is available? Can we design a product? Can we go for a product? So that demand is picking up. I don't know what will be the offtake after this crisis is over, but yes, at least that awareness has come in. So that is one thing which one can look at. How do we create certain products? How do we create something which is going to benefit the people? Another thing which will, I think this is teaching us, this event is teaching us is, like many of us are working from homes. So now, is there really a requirement of going to office daily? Is the infrastructure cost worth it that you need to incur? So that will throw another set of, I think, paradigm shift in the approach of how we do or conduct business. And the third is that as now we are basically working on the virtual world, so even the sale or the transaction of the insurance policies will move more towards digitization, because right now, at least in Africa, we are more comfortable dealing with in person, dealing it with through brokers or agents. But I think this will change over a period of time when people will go for digital buying, and digital activities will increase. So that's my take on this opportunity or the change in the way we conduct our businesses. Thanks.
I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously you're mentioning the fact that there might be new business opportunities coming forward. I'm just wondering how much insurers will need to do a good PR campaign to show the value of what they have to offer if they're not paying some of the claims now that people might expect them to. Do you think that you will need to sort of sell the industry a bit harder going forward, or do you think it will be something that will come naturally, that will actually be quite an easy sell?
No, it will be a hard sell, no doubts on that, because see, as it is, let me put it, all of us are in the same industry. Insurance industry is not perceived very well when it comes to paying claims. People always have that doubt in the mind that insurers never want to pay. So with that background and these circumstances, however best you try to explain to them, they will still come back and they will say that, oh, we knew that you will try to hide behind the fine print and you will not pay the claim. So it will be a hard sell. It will not be an easy sell, even going forward. But at the same time, I think this is also a reason. I think Corneille mentioned that, and that it's again lack of education on the part of the industry, I would put it, that we did not tell what are the ones that we are excluding somewhere or the other. So I think it has to be a balance in terms of educating and then going for the hard sell, what it is covered. Because on the question on the BI, at least we would have received not less than 20-25 queries from various people. Is it covered? Is it covered? So that question is coming back. So I think it will be a difficult sell. It will be a difficult sell going forward.
Liz, can I just make a quick comment here? What I'm personally seeing is the specialist reinsurers. We mentioned event underwriters, event cancellation underwriters, and also I believe the aviation industry as well, due to airspace being locked down in various countries. They are feeling the pinch at the moment in terms of having to pay claims in the case of events or total loss of business altogether. Is it not the case that insurers in Africa can see this as an opportunity once it's business as usual to push those products, because these underwriters who have lost business will want to make up their budgets in the rest of the year? And is that not a business opportunity to the general panel?
I think, Udai, maybe what we should look at is from, you know, a purely, if you look at what insurance is about, we are looking here at an event where it's virtually impossible for you to quantify the exposure. You can't quantify the accumulations. There is very little that you can understand about what's coming next. So, and you are not purely selling for COVID. The last major scare in Africa was Ebola. Corneille has mentioned Lassa. And then COVID came as a complete black swan. No one had contemplated an event of this magnitude impacting the world to this extent. So I think there are limits to what we can postulate regards what insurance can do, what we can do as insurers. And I think we have got to limit it to events that we ultimately are able to price. Ultimately, where we can collect a premium and know the extent to which we are exposed for that premium that we have collected. And I, for one, in the context of Africa, what I will be seeing and what I will be expecting more of, and we've already started seeing agitation for that, is we will be seeing insurers trying to make sure they come up with bulletproof exclusions to ensure that they are not exposed in scenarios like the one that we are observing. Rather than coming up with products, my view is what you will see is insurers trying more and more to protect themselves from exposure to these kinds of, to the kind of scenario that we are facing under COVID. My view is, and I think it's a view informed by the fact that in Africa, we have struggled to sell insurance, basic motor, personal, household, life, retail insurance. We have been struggling. So to imagine us being able to come up with solutions or with a product that is able to respond in a scenario similar to the one that we are faced with under COVID, in the current circumstances with COVID-19, I think it's expecting too much. My view in the advanced markets, the Swiss Re's of this world, the Munich Re's of this world, the Hannover Re's of this world, will be working to ensure that when this happens next, the world or the insurance world is better prepared. But in the short term, my perspective about the African market is we will try to protect ourselves more in scenarios where things come up that we do not understand and that are likely to blindside us. Thank you.
So it's a true one. We definitely are going to tighten our policies and treaties. I believe that's a fact, the reactionary fact. But I also believe that there is now enough data in the West from COVID-19 for maybe some models to come up, and gradually maybe we'll do follow-up when the capacity is created. But I think the more urgent responsibility we have as an industry is, in a way, to protect ourselves as well, is really to push for maybe the pool, something like that, because I think governments have understood now the impact this can create. We should make them understand that there is no insurance coverage at this point, and it's going to be difficult, a comprehensive insurance coverage for something like this. We most probably will be seeing some other resurgences or another virus in another form. So I think if we could organize ourselves into pushing or leading creation of, having those funds kind of turn into pools that, as we've seen in the past on the other pools that we've run successfully. So my take is maybe that's the leadership we ought to create, instead of letting some of the regulators sort of, in a way, take us to in a very difficult direction.
On that issue of pools, Hope, do you expect there to be like a public-private partnership in terms of funding?
Yes, that's what I was thinking about, because this is a realization that these are not things that the private sector alone can cover, but we have the expertise in terms of managing some stuff like that. So it's a public-private partnership. The governments need to come in, and then we try and provide some solution like that, at least in the short term, until we are able to, first of all, understand more about these pandemics and get more statistics. I mean, in Africa today, even as we see the registered numbers, we really are not sure because we are not testing. I'm told that in Kenya, they are starting testing Kibera, one of the biggest slums, and that will give us some compulsory testing. So I think that will give us some ideas. But at this point, we don't even understand the infection rate. We don't even understand the death rate. So how do you indeed price that? Yeah, so I think we need to find a solution in that way. We need to lead that conversation around a pandemic is going to happen again, that we are sure of now. Let's pull together to be able to have social protection.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Lawrence and I think Hope have said. I think at the moment, the priority of the focus is really to survive the post-COVID-19. And I think that's where most companies at the moment are grappling. How do they survive this current situation? I happened to attend a virtual meeting with all our regulator had called, I think last week, with the CEOs. And clearly you can tell the situation is quite dire, and there are challenges ahead. In Kenya, for instance, the RBC, risk-based capital, was supposed to kick in June. I think that will now be thrown into disarray. It came out very clearly in that meeting. Most people have already made it very, very clear they will not be able to achieve those RBC requirements. And of course, now what that means is that we already had a weak industry, which will be further weakened by, obviously, the effect of COVID-19. So the situation, I think, after that will then be very interesting, because how many companies then will be able to survive and continue in business and provide a suitable returns to their shareholders. So really at the moment, in my view, is we have a weak industry. I'm not sure we are in a position even to take advantages of the opportunities that may arise. And probably I would echo what Hope said, that there is a real opportunity now for more pulling together in order to provide capacity. Yeah, that's just what I want to comment.
I want to say that there could be some opportunities to be seized by those who are capable, and I think there will be some. I think that there is a big impact in terms of awareness. Awareness in some of the job categories, like restaurants and lawyers, other people. I think that we may see a demand from the banking sector when, especially, they give loans to people, to ask them to have a cover in terms of loss of business interruption or loss of revenues due to declaration of emergency, state emergency. And this may be acceptable as long as it has a cap. So for example, a cap of 15 days of 3 months, things like that. So insurance may intervene and repay the loans or the interest or something like that. I think that there is a demand. Everyone today, from a work construction staff, a worker in the construction industry somewhere in Africa right now who is locked down somewhere without revenue. So I think there is a kind of awareness. It's up to us as an insurance community to come up with products which are very easy to understand and which are also very easy to sell because today everyone understands that IT platforms are going to be the future in terms of selling our products. So I think there is a huge opportunity to be taken there. We can extend the reasons of the business interruption. Now people can understand the business interruption due to other perils like floods, riots, and so on. People will now understand that a lot of things can happen suddenly and they can have a huge impact on the business. So for me, I can see that kind of opportunity which can take up. Thank you.
In fact, I would just make a comment that what Hope was saying, that our expertise in terms of managing such sort of pandemics are not there. But at the same time, if we look at it not from an insurance point of view, but pandemic bonds have been in existence for a while. And as I understand, somewhere there is one pandemic bond which was subscribed by the World Bank also is likely to be called for, and it's close to about $200 million or something like that as a compensation that is going to come in. So there have been some, I would say, instruments which are available, but on the reinsurance side, I don't know whether we have adequate data, adequate information, or capabilities to manage it.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very, very much. It's incredible how quickly an hour can go, and when we're doing a conversation like this. The message that seems to be emerging, though, is that there are as many questions as there are answers right now, and I suspect that it will take until, you know, several, maybe even a year after the event, that we can actually put numbers to it and actually see what the overall reaction is. I was very interested to hear about the reaction to claims and how they might come out, and also the questions that your clients are asking you. I think that perhaps will pave the way for those future opportunities that Corneille has mentioned there, particularly at the end. I think, Corneille, you ended on a very positive note there, so that's always a good thing to do. I just wanted to let you know that we've been recording this session, and we will share this recording with you. So for those of you who joined a little later, or maybe the internet was not quite so great, you will be able to pick up on the whole conversation. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass over to Udai just to say thank you and goodbye, but certainly thank you and goodbye from my perspective. Udai.
Thank you very much, Liz. And thank you to all our participants for your valuable contributions on this forum. I think we can take something positive away with us to apply in our daily lives and in our daily work as well, whilst we fight this invisible enemy. Before we all depart to whatever, to get on with whatever we are doing today, I want to wish each and every one of you a very healthy immediate future, and please stay well and stay safe. Thank you very much.